Welcome to SikhCast, brought to you by Sikh Research Institute, illuminating every path.
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. My name is Jasleen Kaur, and I'm a researcher at the Sikh Research Institute. Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Sidak Impact podcast series. I'm joined here today by Poznma Kaur. Thank you for joining us, and maybe you can just tell us a bit about yourself so that we can get to know you, and then why you decided to attend Sidak.
Well, thank you for having me. My name is Poznma, and I live in Winnipeg, Manitoba, and I attended Sidak last year in 2024, and for me, I would say that as a person, like to get to know me, I'm normally like I'm a pretty kind of I don't know, like chill person, I would say. I like watching sitcoms. I love, I have a dog. I love doing Sudoku puzzles, gardening. I'm a registered dietitian by profession. So there's a lot of like various aspects to my life that I sometimes feel like don't always, like it's just different bubbles of existence. And I just kind of hop into like each bubble, like depending on what kind of mood I'm in. Yeah, and for attending Sidak, it's a couple of my friends had actually attended Sidak previously, and they had been telling me that this is something that you need to do. Like you need to go and be there and experience the whole thing. And so, partially because of their recommendations, I went. But I think during that time in my life, I was feeling the need of connecting with the community and I don't think I've ever felt like super connected with my Sikhi or Sangat, just anywhere. I just never felt like the Sikh spaces were for me per se. Like I'm not saying they weren't. I'm pretty sure like everyone probably would have been super welcoming, but I just never felt like I could go and explore it in like those local spaces. And when I kind of read about Sidak and I felt that it's probably like going to be really inclusive, it's going to be a good learning environment, and maybe I can get some of my questions answered because I came with a lot of questions and not a lot of clarity around what my personal journey of Sikhi looks like. So yeah, I decided that this is a good year for me. I had nothing going on that summer, so it all worked out. So yeah, I came to Sidak.
Yeah. And I think that that's a really relatable place to be in, of like not feeling like you can enter into those spaces or like explore in those spaces. And I think it takes a kind of, yeah, I think that if we're not used to it, it's hard to kind of push ourselves into those spaces. So like I think every other Sidiker that I've spoken to on this podcast series has said something pretty similar. And I think that's also one of the beautiful things about the program is you have a bunch of people coming there looking to cultivate a space they've like about. And so it's yeah, quite an experience. I had a similar thing when I went to where I was like, okay, I don't feel like I belong in these places. So I had a lot of nerves going into things. Just like even arriving in Vancouver, I was like, oh my God. So that brings me to the next question of like, when you first arrived at Sidak, how were you feeling? Did you feel nervous? Were you like excited? Did you not know what to expect? Were you, take us through that day.
The whole journey. So okay, so I'm also the kind of person I like knowing things in advance. Like I want to know all the details. I want to know, okay, like this is what my living situation is going to look like. This is what the bathroom situation is, or the food, or everything. So because I didn't know a lot, like I had a general idea of kind of what to expect.
Yeah.
I was pretty nervous before coming. I'm not gonna lie. I was excited, but I was pretty nervous too. I think nerves were definitely there because of me not knowing kind of what to expect or what kind of situation is this going to be? Because I'd never really attended any like Sikh camps before, and other camps that I'd attended, like I had gone with friends that I knew, that were going to be there. So it's not only a new environment, but it's entirely new community. I don't know like a lot of the people, or like all the people there. So yeah, it was pretty I was nervous when I landed in Vancouver. I actually came a day prior, so I stayed with my family. So I think staying in a familiar place kind of helped settle my nerves a little bit before I actually came to Sidak the next day. But a month before that, I know like I'm maybe jumping ahead, but like with SikhRI 201, like we do get our readings kind of like prior to attending. And I think that's the part that caused me to be excited. So even though I was nervous, there was that baseline excitement too, that okay, like these are all the things that I'm going to be learning. And because I don't know a lot, and just based on the reading, I'm like, okay, there's a lot of opportunity to expand my brain and my mind, and just the scope of like how I'm going to engage. So I think the excitement was there based on like all the new experiences for the learning aspect that were going to come with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's fair. I think it's like always nice to have it in front of you and be like, okay, this is the layout of
Yeah.
the so
Yeah.
okay, so you've mentioned SikhRI 201. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about like what made you decide to go with that track, and how did it align with like your own sort of, I don't know, not expectations, but like desires for your own Sikhi journey, or just like your own interests? What was the thought process in choosing from those three tracks?
Mhm. So the one thing that I really liked about Sikito One was, like, I know this might be a deterrent for some people, but I liked the fact that it was very research and like reading heavy course. I think I learned best by like reading and researching, and just kind of like that's kind of how I know my expansion happens.
Mhm.
So for me, like it was perfect in that sense, but also the the aspect of just like learning the history of Sikhs, right? The theological aspect of like essentials of like Sikhi, or the essence of what Sikhi is. I think I needed that to start my journey in a way. Like I didn't really grow up in a Sikh in any Sikh spaces. Like I had a general idea of the history, but nothing like too in deep. I had a general idea of like, okay, this is maybe what like Sikhi means, or but I think like the philosophical and the theological aspect, and like the discussion based like learning environment is what I really was kind of looking for. Because for me to develop my own internal sense of like what it means for me to be a Sikh, I needed like a lot of like reading materials. I needed a lot of like discussion. I wanted to connect with my peers and see like what they were thinking. And I think that's the reason why I thought starting with SikhRI 201 and maybe working my way backwards is the way to go for me. So yeah.
No, and I think that all came across when um having your like voice in the classroom, I think was so lovely, because you really, I think, were a good I felt like you brought new angles to the discussions, and also like those angles caused us to pause a little bit, which was so nice. I think like the I don't know, not to like generalize, but a lot of times the personality that is attracted to 201 is a little bit more like, I'm going to learn so much, and like wants to kind of get through it. But it was so nice to have you being so thoughtful about the material, and also like bringing questions that I've just never heard before. And I think that's also part of what's so generally exciting about Civic every year, is that like the sort of combination of personalities in each track is different every time, and it like I just feel like I learn new stuff every year. So it's nice to hear that that's what you
Yeah.
get out of the track. Yeah.
Yeah, I felt there was definitely like a synergy between like the cohort that I was in, for sure. Like I feel like it took us maybe a couple of days to get in sync with everyone, but I think kind of everyone was on the same page, and like everyone respected like each other's like opinions. And so I think it was a very respectful, inclusive learning environment. Yeah.
Which is nice to hear. It's what we aim for. Yeah, so then okay, so maybe you can also take us through like a typical day at Sidak. What the schedule looked like, how that structure felt for you. Because I mean for me, like I went the summer before college, so it was actually kind of a nice way to have some like experience of like self-accountability, because sometimes you get
Mhm.
thrown into things when you're like 18 and you're like, oh my God, I have all this, I have to decide what to do with my time. Um, and then also when I went back at like 22, 23, I think that it was I just hadn't had that structure since college. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, just taking us through like, what does a typical day look like? How did that feel for you? That would be helpful.
Um, okay, so as far as I remember, I think most days were quite similar in terms of structure, like apart from like a couple of days that we kind of did other things. But like we would have our morning divan, and then breakfast, our classes, like sessions, I think like 3 sessions,
Yeah.
2 or 3, yeah, 3 sessions, lunch, and then usually after that there was usually a combined session with all the tracks. Like some days and some days like we had more free time to just explore and do our own thing. And then evening divan and dinner, and then yeah, just do your own thing kind of a thing. So but for me, I I love structure. Like I love routine in my daily life. I think I like, even though I fight structure,
Uh,
I think I thrive in structure.
oh,
So
you're
like
my language, yeah.
yeah, so it's honestly a paradox for me, but I like I really try not to be in structure, but I know that like I'm gonna do my best work like when my time is structured. So that was super helpful for me. So it didn't really take me long to get used to the structure at Sidak, like a couple of days, because it was different than like my structure at home. But the fact that I knew like at all the times, like okay, at this time like this is gonna happen, and then this time like this is going to happen. So I think for somebody coming in with like anxiety or nervousness, like having some kind of a structure like helps you be more grounded and be more settled as well,
Yeah.
into the whole environment. So yeah, so like yeah, that's kind of what I felt.
Yeah, that's really well
Yeah.
said. I never even thought about it like that because I'm also an anxious girly. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I always have found it very helpful. And I also fight structure in my daily life. And then as soon as it's introduced, I'm like, oh, suddenly I'm doing so well. That's crazy. Yeah, I think that's helpful. And maybe part of this discussion can also be around the thing that you mentioned earlier, which is like the kind of environment that is cultivated at Sidak, um, like what your experience was in kind of the culture of Sidak,
Mhm.
and like what was your experience with like your peers and the community that was sort of built there, um, and how did that like contribute to your experience? And then also if you want to talk about like we also I think we all kind of keep in touch in some way. So what kinds of connections did you feel like lasted beyond the program? Um, any of those, that sort of cohort of questions would be helpful.
Yeah. Okay. So, for me, like in daily life, social interactions are a little bit difficult because of anxiety, and I'm also neurodivergent. So I feel like the way I process social interactions may be a little bit different than most people. Again, like because of the structured environment and having that time, like having structured time with like different people, like my cohort or like from different tracks of people, at times like being forced to collaborate together or be in spaces together to do different projects. I definitely like helped me build those connections, because if it was just left to me to just do my own thing and like go and connect with like all the like Sidikers, probably may not have done that well, to be honest. Like I still would have sought those connections out, but I think just having that layout was super helpful. And part of my anxiety going into Sidak was also like, oh, I'm not sure like what kind of community I'm going to encounter, because that's kind of always what has been for me like a deterrent entering into Sikh spaces, because I've never felt like I belonged, or like I can have conversations, or like what kind of conversations I'm even gonna have with people, right? So but from the like get go, I felt like really comfortable. Everyone was super nice. Everyone was super supportive. Everyone just wanted to learn and just be in that space. I think the collective energy of that space, I don't know how to put that into words, to be honest, but it felt really good. You know, if it didn't feel like, oh, I can't like speak up here, or I need to like kind of close myself off. So the community building aspect, it didn't feel difficult for me. Like usually, like for me, it feels really difficult to try to build a sangat or try to build community. Like, it takes really long time for me. But I think like the fact that I was able to like, you know, get it done in like 2 weeks and like build those connections, that speaks a lot to like what kind of space is cultivated. In terms of like connections beyond Sidak, there's obviously like loads of opportunities to stay connected with just everyone who attends Sidak. Like we have a monthly, like we have a group going on, like where like we try to meet like either once a month or once every 2 months and kind of emulate the whole Divan sessions that we had going on at Sidak. So like that's something that I try to participate in as much as possible. Of course, like following like people on social media, keeping in touch with them. A few like Sidakers had like they've reached out, just you know, saying like, hey, like if you ever want to talk, or if you ever want to like discuss something, like we're here. So I think this is something that I'd never experienced before in a Sikh space, where like people are just willing to um, accept you for who you are and try to build those connections like once you're like out of that space, because a lot of the times like connections feel superficial, like they feel like they're only just kind of secluded to that one event or that one kind of like whatever is going on, and like after that like there's nothing like, but that's not how my experience at Sidak was. Yeah
I think that's so beautifully said. Yeah, I also am like not an extroverted person, so I feel like the structure, even for facilitators, is really helpful to just get to know people, and sort of push yourself to speak to people, even though that's maybe not your inclination. And I've always appreciated that. And then also I think that like having the space outside of that, like we kind of went through the structure of the day, but having the like free time to be by myself or to just like turn my brain off is always really helpful, because I think it can be a lot, like it can be pretty overstimulating to be around people all the time. And I think that like part of the environment, like physical environment of Sidak, where there's like you've got mountains, you've got like walking trails, there's like a lake. It's like there's benches everywhere. Like you can kind of find pockets of time to be by yourself too, which just also like processing the information of the day or processing the interactions of the day. I also wanted to ask about like, I don't know, speaking about, kind of being pushed out of your comfort zone and just like interacting with people and um in a way that maybe you wouldn't do without that structure, I like really relate to. But are there also any other moments of like feeling that you were pushed out of your comfort zone in like a healthy way, and how those moments sort of shaped you or shaped your experience of those 2 weeks?
yeah I think day two, I still remember this, like day two. I don't remember when it was said, but basically, um, they said that we have to do like Shabad is like mandatory. Like everyone like has to do it at least once. Like even if you've never done it before. I've never done kirtan before in my life. And I have honestly no musical abilities whatsoever. Um, and when I heard that, like my first thought was, is there still time? Can I get out of this? Like, can I just pack my bags and go so that I don't have to do this? I was really contemplating that. But I'm glad I didn't do it.
You didn't make a run. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really glad. So that was really uncomfortable for me because like I was really pushed out of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
But in a healthy way now, right? The reason why I'm saying it was healthy for me, in retrospect, is like we still had like lots of opportunities to practice. Like a bunch of us kind of banded together, like people who had never done it before. So after lunch or after our sessions, like we would just go and practice in the divan and just kind of get into it. And I still remember the day our group did the Shabad. Like I felt like, to me it felt like oh, it's going to feel very performative. Like it's going to feel performative because I've never done it before, and I feel like I'm just performing because there's so much to think about. Like there's like I need to like remember it. I need to just kind of like not be like out of sync or out of tune and just make it feel cohesive. But when we actually did it, I wasn't like thinking about any of that stuff. Like for the first time, like in like during Kirtan and Shabad time, like I felt like connected. I really felt there was this moment of connection that it was honestly weird to experience. Like I wasn't thinking about like, is this all sounding good? Like that wasn't like a primary thought. The thought was like, oh, this feels really good, to do this and to do it in like a sangat that is supportive. And after that, like Kirtan and Shabad now are actually like part of my life. Like I listen to it more. I try to do it more solo. Like I still don't have the courage to just kind of go out and do it in like community yet. But I feel because I was able to do that at Sidak, in a very like non-judgmental environment, um, it it has actually enhanced my connection with Kaur like a little bit more, because this is another avenue for me to connect. Like before, my connection was more internal. Like I used to like more like talkative. Like I used to talk or maybe just sit in silence and contemplate. Just singing aspect of it, or musical aspect of it, was never something that I did before. And so that's why like I was pushed out of my comfort zone in a healthy way. So now like I now have this new avenue of connection. So for sure, that was uncomfortable in the beginning, but I'm glad that I went through this process. Yeah.
And what a beautiful memory. I think like it's always nice to see, always like very moving. I mean, I've said this on every podcast, but I like spend a lot of those 2 weeks like tearing up at things. As you know, I'm a crier. Um, but it's always so like moving to see Siddiqers who like have never done something before together trying to do this thing that felt like intimidating or not for them. Um, and like really seeing them encourage each other. And then it's not even
Yeah.
the people who are singing the Shabad, it's like the whole Sangat.
It's everyone. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like it's just so good every time. It gets me
Yeah.
every time. And I think it goes back to that thing that you were saying before of like, coming in kind of not having the experience of feeling like six spaces were for you. And then you have 2 weeks of like twice a day Devon where like it just starts to feel really comfortable because
Yeah.
everybody is so encouraging and like warm and like compassionate, and it's so conversational, and it feels like you're not performing a kind of like respect for the sake of performing a respect. You're
Mhm.
actually sitting in your seeking together. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
so it becomes less about like, am I doing the Shabad justice, or like, am I doing it
Yeah.
correctly? And more about like, oh wow, like I actually am experiencing the emotions of this thing. Um,
Yeah.
and it's
Because
yeah.
I think there's a lot of because sometimes like I used to approach it from a very fear-based perspective, that I'm scared of like doing the wrong thing or saying the wrong thing, or just like I just being the wrong thing, like, you know, like just don't know how to be in that space. But I don't think that was a feeling at all at Sidak, because mistakes were encouraged, because that's part of the learning process, right? Like if you've never done something before, and you make like, and I'm saying the word mistake, like I don't know what else you use in that, and because I'm just filling it up, but it's not even a mistake, just kind of doing something for the first time, and it may not be done according to the societal standards. But I think at Sidak, like none of that mattered, because like everyone knew that this is a learning space. And for some people, like all of this is like really new. But for some Sidakers, like this is something that they've done their whole life. Like for them, that's not new. But I think that's where the facilitators were key in bridging that gap, like not having people who've never done it before feel like they can never do it, versus like people who've done it their entire life, like them being like peer mentors in a way as well for their fellow Sidakers.
Yeah. I think that, yeah, that's a great way to put it. Yeah, like putting people to kind of like create more
Yeah.
empowerment, I think is really great. Yeah, and I'm wondering, I mean, you've shared that memory. Is there like another like moment that sticks out to you, whether it was in the classroom or outside of the classroom, a discussion you had with somebody, an experience you had by yourself? Like Gurmat was like about a walk you went on, that like really sticks out as like a core memory from Sidak for you?
Hmm. Honestly, there are a lot. There are a lot of those memories. Okay, I'll go more deep into one, but like I do want to highlight another experience. Because for me, everything was super new. Like it was, Sidak was actually the first time I'd actually like physically was able to feel Guru Granth Sahib. Like I'd never done that in my life before. So that for me was a really like powerful experience. Like again, not there's nothing that I can put into words. I like the whole day I felt like it seems like I don't know if I can explain it to people, like, oh, like touching something, like like it may seem like nothing, but at the same time like it is everything, you know, because I'm not just like kind of touching like a physical thing, but it kind of spoke to me in more like spiritual sense as well, because for me the Rahat Maryada of Diwan, like I always questioned it, like why do we do certain things, like why am I sitting like this, or why do I need to go and do that? But when I was at Sidak, like everything just kind of made sense. That collective ways of being in a social setting, like it's there for a purpose. Like I understand that now, right? So I no longer question it. I'm just kind of I now just let it be. But I think like having that experience was really powerful for me. And the other thing is like in our SikhRI 201, like we had like so many great discussions, but the one that for some reason like always like comes back to me, and you can like correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know, like if I don't know if it was like Puran Singh's reading. It was something like I don't even like I tried going back to the readings and I tried like finding that exact paragraph that I want to talk about, but for some reason I can't find it. Like I don't know if I imagined the whole thing or if it actually happened, but basically the discussion was around taking Amrit, and I feel like I'm definitely not at that stage in my life where I feel like I'm ready to take that next step, um but I understand now, like people who do it, why they do it, and what they feel in that moment, right? So the discussion was more so around when he said when he wanted to take it, but he wasn't ready, but he knew he was ready when like he felt like God placed his like Ikunkar placed his hand on his head, and like how can he cut his hair now? So something along the lines.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if I'm quoting it right, but so I just think about that a lot for some reason. I don't know why. So yeah, so now I am putting actually less pressure on myself to like know, like, okay, when am I going to know that I'm ready, or to take that next step, because now it's a lot more in flow, that like if it happens, it happens. Like it's actually just like me living in hookum. Like if it's meant to happen, like it's going to be that type of a feeling. Like I'll just know, So yeah.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful paragraph from Budin Singh. And the reason you can't find it is because it wasn't in our reading.
Okay.
I had brought it in because it's this one paragraph
Okay.
that I think about literally like once a month.
Yeah.
And he talks about the kara, and
Yeah.
he talks about like when he throws his hand up into the air and the iron ring like catches the sunlight. For a second, it feels like his arm is the guru's arm too. And we
Hmm.
talked a lot about the kind of the emotional, like inexplicable connection to these like gifts from the guru, and the way that like they can't really be explained as like symbols or articles of faith because it's doing a disservice
Hmm.
to like the deep, like kind of time collapsing connection that people have with them. And I always bring that in because it always makes me cry. And
Yeah.
I love to cry, as we've
Yeah.
established on all these podcasts. But no, I'll send that to you. But it's
Okay.
I always love that discussion because we have so many different people in the room. We've got people who have taken Amrit, we have people who are thinking about taking Amrit, we have people who've never thought about it because they think it's like not for them. And it
Hmm.
becomes such a beautiful, like I think generative and like fruitful discussion. Um, it's like one of my favorite sessions. So I'm glad that that's the one that's like stuck out.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think about it like very often. I don't know why, but yeah. Yeah. So that was the one that I wanted to highlight that. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. So sort of moving on to,
Mhm.
we talked about like fears and doubts before attending. Um, maybe some sort of like from a practical sense. I feel like you had to have like prior knowledge of like SikhRI in order to like participate in the tracks, or in your track.
Mhm.
Yeah, because I think that's like a concern that some Siddhikars or potential Siddhikars have when they're doing the application, is like it can feel a little intimidating. I know that like when I came in 2017, I've already said this on a couple episodes, but like I made a list of like every book that I thought I needed to read before I went, like in order to like be,
Yeah.
I don't know, good enough to be there or something. Spoiler alert, I did not read a single book on that list. I only panicked. And then I got there and I was like, okay, it's actually fine. But yeah, what was your experience with that? Did you feel like you needed to do some kind of like legwork beforehand? And what
Mhm.
for you?
Um, so I did feel like I did need to do some kind of like prep work. Similar to you, I ended up doing nothing but panic. So I kind of left it. But you're right. Like I don't think you need. There is no prerequisite, but the only prerequisite, I guess, I would say, is that like having that curiosity to learn, and just honestly, that's it, right? So even in Sikhi 201, even it's like a lot of like reading heavy or like research based. It would seem like that, oh, you need to know certain things beforehand, but the way like the sessions like start out, like we literally start with like thinking and talking about Ikonkar, Nam and Simran, like essentials of Sikhi, like history of Sikh. So you're learning a lot. Like I don't think you need to come with like deep knowledge, but I think that curiosity for learning needs to be there. Like that's the only prerequisite, I think. Right. So yeah.
Yeah, and what a beautiful way to say that. Yeah, I think one other 201er, Gurpratap,
Mhm.
in the first episode of this year had said that the thing that because he was like, I felt like I had so much prior experience and knowledge, and then I
Mhm.
got there and all that stuff got kind of upturned, where it's like you're either learning or you're unlearning, and you're usually doing some
Yeah.
combination of both over those 2 weeks. But the thing he said too was like coming with a thirst and like a curiosity and a desire to bring sort of an attentiveness to your questions instead of just being like, tell me the answer, tell me the answer, tell me the answer. Like
Yeah.
spending time and having some kind of like patience in your own curiosity is really, I think that's a
Yeah.
beautiful, like that's the prerequisite. It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
in a, um, Yeah. What a beauty.
Because I like, based on like what you said, I don't like, for a lot of the questions, like there are no straightforward answers,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, like the curiosity and just the unlearning aspect as well, like, because sometimes like you may not have the answer, but just trying to sit with the question sometimes, like, and I think we did that a lot in our track, you
Yeah.
know. So yeah.
Yeah, maybe to the point of frustration for some, but yes. Yeah, and I think that kind of brings me to the next question, which is like a lot of Siddiqers say this, right? Like I came to Siddiq with so many questions, and you've said it in this episode, but you've also like caveated that with like not everything has a straight answer. Um, so did you feel like you could ask those questions, whether inside or outside of the classroom, and even if they didn't have a straight answer, like how did you feel like those conversations went? Did you find them frustrating? Did you find them helpful? Because I know like a lot of facilitators kind of like sit around in the Lunger Hall, and different, people for not
Mhm.
201 might come and ask me a question. People who are in 201 might go ask Cerner a question, right? Like there's a lot of like going to different facilitators looking for guidance on things. Um, did you feel like both the facilitators and your peers, because sometimes the questions are happening within like peer-to-peer discussions, did you feel like there was a good sort of support system? Um, yeah, tell me a little bit about that experience, if you can.
Mhm. Yeah. Um, hmm. In terms of like, yeah, like reaching out to facilitators for questions, I like, personally, like I felt like you guys were like always available. Like maybe I don't I and now that I think about it, I'm like, I don't know like how you did it, because
Me neither.
sometimes like, yeah, because sometimes like it can be a lot when like you're getting so many questions your way, right? Like just like, I don't know if there's a need to answer it, but I think the way like you kind of dealt with it was like I said, it wasn't always like um getting a straight answer, like, because sometimes like you don't even know, right? But sometimes it's about like having a discussion and arriving at the answer together, or just kind of letting it be and letting it flow and see like, if an answer comes to you, maybe it won't, like maybe it will, I don't know, right? But that channel of asking those questions was always open, right? Not only for the facilitators, but even like having those peer discussions, whether in class or outside of class, because we had a lot of opportunity to mingle with people from different tracks, right? Like during longer or different projects that we did together. So yeah, like there were a lot of like discussions, and I felt like oftentimes like, yeah, we would arrive at some answers, but most of the times like it was just like, I don't know, or we don't know, or like this is a lot, but let's just like kind of sit on it. And sometimes I felt like I didn't get the answers like verbally, but through a sense of like a feeling. Like if like something would just feel right, like if I'm doing something or I'm thinking about something, like it just feels right to be in that space. And so maybe an answer would come in that non-verbal way as well. So just like being able to recognize that not everything has to be explicitly said. So am I going on a tangent? Like, I don't know. So yeah. So I think so yeah, based on like my experience, like there were tons of opportunities for like getting your questions answered. But I think um before I went to Sidak, like I thought I would get all of my questions answered because I had a lot of questions. But after Sidak, my approach to like even having questions has shifted. Like it's okay to have questions. Like that's how people learn. Like that's how you introspect. That's how you contemplate. That's how you like expand. But at times, just kind of flowing with things and just kind of getting that knowing through experiences. Like if I'm like sitting outside and I'm thinking about something and I just don't know, like please, like universe, like help me you kind of arrive to an answer, like this doesn't make any sense. But then I'll just see like the wind kind of blow on the leaves and I'm like, okay, this feels right. I don't know, like I don't have an answer, but whatever this is in this moment like feels right. So then I just kind of move on with my life. Yeah.
No, that's such beautiful. Such a beautiful way to put it. Yeah, part of what Gurpratap was talking about in the first episode was like going on a walk and looking around and being like, wow, I feel so small and everything is so big. And like maybe that some of the questions I have are just like not, it's okay. I can keep them as
Yeah.
questions for now. Um, yeah, what a beautiful way to put that. I think maybe we can sort of start to close. Um, I wanted to know, so you did talk about like the experience of singing a Shabad at Sidak and how kind of Kirtan has become such a part of your life now. Is there something else that you feel like you walked away from Sidak with that like affects your kind of day to day, whether it's like a particular skill or a particular like, I don't know, knowledge or learning or something a little bit more abstract, like something that's kind of stuck with you since last summer?
Mhm. So I think the number one thing, honestly, for me, has been like just based on our last discussion, that like I don't need to know everything. I know in kind of in the middle, I said like I'm the type of person like I need to know all the details to make myself feel better. But over the past year, I've started to just kind of let go of that a little bit. I like even though like it's kind of part of me still, but I don't know what happened at Sidak. I think obviously something transformative happened. I don't know what exact process took place, but inherently now I don't feel like I need to control every aspect of my life. I need to know every single answer, or I need to just that need to do something or know something is reduced, which actually has had a lot of positive impact, like just on my like personal life, my professional life, because I can just kind of flow with things and just let it be, because I feel like I just don't need to orchestrate like my life because it's not mine to do that, so yeah.
Yeah. No, and that's great. And it reminds me of like one of the visuals that we talked about. I think because of maybe it was a Puran Singh poem. It was, I think maybe during the Punjabi poetry session of like what it means to be like to become a river and to like kind of go with
Yeah.
motion.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that it's always been a beautiful visual to me because it's both about like moving with things and also about a kind of like inherent steadiness that you find. Um, where like yeah, the things that maybe moved you to a degree of like, oh my God, I need to like figure out what to do about this thing. No longer do that. You just like feel like, okay, I'm just gonna like go with it. And I think that that's actually been a big part of, yeah, a big part of my learning every year from Sidak. Um, because yeah, life can be pretty tumultuous.
Yeah.
And and so trying to find a way to move with it and still kind of have your wits about you, I think is really helpful. Um, okay, so then I think if we can like go to the listener for a second, just imagine that they have a tab open on their computer and it's like the application is open and they like are staring at it and they're not sure if it's the place for them. What would you say to somebody who's like considering it,
Hmm.
but they're still feeling a little bit unsure about applying?
Hmm. So I would say like okay, definitely apply. Like just apply because like me, maybe on day two you might want to leave. I don't know, but stick it out. It could be like a nerve-wracking experience. I'm not gonna lie. It could be uncomfortable at times, but there are so many moments of transformation and connection and community building that also come out of this experience. That I don't think like there are a lot of spaces that are this inclusive. In my year, um, and I still remember like Harinder Singh also said that at the very end of the day that was probably like one of the most diverse groups of people at Sidak that year. And Sidak for me felt like a microcosm of our society at large. Like that's how I envision all Sikh spaces to be like inclusive, like including everyone. Like everyone is on their own personal journey, right? And if you have just like even a tiny seed of that curiosity in you, I think it's worthwhile to explore that by coming to Sidak.
Yeah. You're not the first person who's mentioned that microcosm of the macrocosm thing that Harinder Singh said, because it's true. And I think that so much of what, again, like makes me weep a little bit about Civic every year is that, like, I feel like it's one place where the like idea of like Sangat and also like Panth really feels like it really feels like it's tangible in front of me for those 2 weeks of like watching people soften to each other, watching people become more compassionate over 2 weeks, watching people who like never would have interacted in the world interact and like learn from each other and come at conversations with like such respect. It's it's just so great. It's so beautiful. And I think that like in a way, the lack of certainty about like whether that's the space for you actually like means that it's the space for you. Some way. Yeah, and I think maybe we can end on two questions. So one is like, let's say then that the person that is sitting here listening to this has now decided they're going to apply. And then they get in, and then they end up in Mission BC at the Khalsa Center at Miracle Valley. And they're like, okay, how do I make the most of this time? What's your advice on that? Like, how can we all get the most out of that 2 weeks?
Okay, so in practical ways, I think the one thing that I feel like is probably going to be helpful to everyone who's coming to Sidak for the first time is like setting like just some kind of an intention of like why you're there. Like it doesn't have to be like you don't have to leave with that intention being fulfilled, but just knowing like, okay, I'm here now. What is the overarching, like what do I want to get away from this experience? Because there's so many things you can take away, right? So like I said, you don't have to stick with that intention, but coming with that intention can be helpful. And the other thing is like if you are in SikhRI 201, like please do the readings because
thank you so much for saying that.
Yeah, because it could be it's really a lot. Like if you don't, there's a lot of information to take away, and the discussions are more fulfilling if you kind of know what you're discussing. Like you can still participate, but I think you can take away a lot more out of those sessions, like if you're kind of prepared a little bit. And the last thing that I would say is just again going with the flow and just letting those experiences happen to you and just taking it all in, because 2 weeks may feel like a lot, but it's not a lot of time. So everything moves pretty quickly, like everything is pretty fast and it's over before you know it. And then so I just so try to be present in like as many moments as possible, so bringing your attention to like just being in like Mission BC and enjoying that moment that you're there for the 2 weeks. Yeah,
I think that's great advice. Everybody always talks about how it's like so much time, and it's like you make friends.
Yeah.
Days are packed, and it's like,
Yeah.
100 years has happened in 2 weeks, and now
Yeah.
I have to go home. So yeah, we talk about the post-civic blues a little bit because it's like you kind of are coming down from 2 weeks of something that you don't even like really understand until like months later or even like a year later of like what it did to and for you. Okay, so I think my last question then for you is like, is there anything else that you want to share with somebody who's thinking about attending Civic, or any last sort of final thoughts that you want to say about that experience? And then we'll let you go.
Um, So I like honestly, personally, for me, I felt like this was a much needed step to exploring like my own personal journey of Sikhi and what that feels like. So for anyone like who is just wanting to explore that for themselves, and is willing to unlearn, like we discussed before, like this is the space for you. Sidak is a very non-judgmental, inclusive learning environment where you get opportunities of building connections, building communities, but not only like building communities, like learning how to be organized as a community, like, and because organization in a community is important to be effective. And it's a transformative experience. I kept saying, like, over the 2 weeks that I was there, like, this is so magical. Like, this is magical. Like, because it truly is, like, that's my perspective on it. And I feel like a lot of people might echo the same feeling that I have. Yeah.
Yeah, I would echo it. I think that's a good, because one of the questions that I didn't ask you is if you could describe Sidak in one word, what would it be? And so we'll go with magical.
Magical. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for spending time with me and talking about this. If you are listening to this podcast, thank you for joining us. And I hope that it's helped you as you're like thinking about coming to Sidak, thinking about filling out the application. Maybe you're halfway through and you needed a little bit of a push. And as always, if you have any questions about the program or the particular tracks, you can email sidak@sikhri.org. If you want to read about what each track is sort of entails, then you can go to sikhri.org/Sidak. Thank you so much again, Poznma, for spending time. And Fateh, everyone. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Sidak is a transformative leadership development program for young Sikh adults aged 18 to 39. Engage in an immersive 2-week experience that fosters connection, growth, and a deeper understanding of Sikhi.
You are listening to SikhCast by Sikh Research Institute, illuminating every path.